So good morning, bienvenidos, and I'm glad that you're here. If you are visiting Austin for the first time, I hope that you do enjoy the city. It's a pretty spectacular city. And if you're from here, you already know what is now becoming like the worst kept secret in America, that Austin just really rocks, and things like South by Southwest EDU happen here because of the kind of people we attract to this city. So we do live in a remarkable city, just teeming with energy, world-class innovation, innovative businesses, and a very engaged community. There isn't a thought in the minds of some of our public education advocates that they don't share with their superintendent. So that's just to give you a taste of what it feels like to be in the heart of a city like Austin. And Austin also ranks near the top of every list of every great place to live, to run a business, or even raise kids. The Daily Beast named Austin the #1 funniest city in the United States. We're also the #3 best city for staying young, the #3 biggest brain magnet, the next boom town, according to Forbes, and the #4 most social media savvy city. So while you're here at Southwest for EDU, remember to crack a joke. That's supposed to be funny. Tap into your youthful energy, all while thinking big thoughts and then going and blog about it. I just want to take a moment to introduce to you our 3 blogging students. Where are they? Please stand. Be recognized. We have students that are blogging for us today, so thank you for coming. Could you give them a round of applause? And it is inspiring and actually quite humbling to be invited to speak to you this morning in this building with all the innovative thinkers and doers that are taking on some of the most important issues in education. From standards to assessments, I know you heard from the commissioner just yesterday, to achievement gaps and educational quality, which will come packaged to you in presentations like this in many different ways. So I just encourage you to take advantage of that. And I just want to also thank you for coming and spending an hour with me as I talk to you about the changing face of education, today's leaders and today's learners and tomorrow's leaders. Now, as you know, this whole event is going to culminate with the biggest keynote speaker of the week. He is known throughout the world as a leader and a founder of one of the most incredible companies, Microsoft. He's a pioneer in the technology revolution, and he's also, for those of us in education, considered the man who has helped change the face of education, investing his own private money in ensuring that public education is approved, not just in this country, but across the world. But Bill Gates, if you didn't know who I was talking about, it all started for him when he was a student in middle school, when he was actually a learner. So when Bill Gates was in the 8th grade, if y'all know this story, can you raise your hand? Oh, good. I love spreading the lore about people, since people gossip about me all the time. But when Bill Gates was in the 8th grade, the Mothers Club at his school used the proceeds from their rummage sale to buy a teletype Model 33 ASR terminal and a block of computer time on the General Electric computer for the students in the school. Now, Gates took an interest in programming and was actually excused from his math classes to pursue his interest. He wrote his first computer program on this machine. It was a little version of tic-tac-toe that allowed users to play this game against another computer. Now, when administrators in his school began to appreciate his programming abilities, they asked little Gates to write a computer program to schedule students in classes. And as the story goes, now remember, we're talking about the typical prepubescent middle school boy, he modified the code so that he was placed in classes with mostly females. Now, it is indeed amusing to think of Bill Gates as a young boy in the early ages and days of computing. But we all know what then followed, right? He was one of yesterday's learners and is today's leader, and he's helped change the face of public education. And what I think about isn't so much about Bill Gates, the man that we know today, but rather I think about the choices that the parents and the administrators made in that school. A little thing like using money from a rummage sale or seeing a talent and really trying to tap into it, where they helped him make a connection between a world that I would argue he only knew inside his head, and only he could imagine for the adults that were already kind of timing out in their experience in public education. And there's a Greek mathematician and philosopher, Pythagoras, known for his math abilities, who once said, "Choices are the hinges of destiny." And every day, we as adults make choices on behalf of children. Parents make choices about their schools, schools make choices about their teachers, teachers make choices about students, and again, try not to think middle school, but I can hardly say this with a straight face. As a former middle school teacher, I can tell you that 13-year-olds make some of the craziest choices you can ever imagine. But they don't always make the best choices, but there are many who do. And the point is that these choices often can define what happens to them in the future. And our decision making actually influences them too. So as we think about preparing our students for the future, what I mean to address is what that looks like in our choices and decision making given the changing face of public education, so that we do ensure that one thing actually happens. We're making the right choices with their futures in mind. Now, I believe that our goal in public education must be to ensure that every student has access to a quality education. And a quality education provides students with the skills they need to have choices in life. So academic skills, so they graduate on time and get a diploma and an education that allows them to be successful in college. Career skills, so they are prepared to be successful in a rapidly evolving, ever-flat economy in a technologically driven world. And decision-making skills, so that they participate as informed citizens in our democracy with the smarts and the heart to be better leaders than we ever were. Now, while I was introduced, the one thing about my background that wasn't shared that I think is really important that you understand about me as a presenter is that I was born and raised in Selma, Alabama. It is the heart of the civil rights movement, known mostly for our infamous role for Bloody Sunday, but that there is a proud piece of our legacy from that town about influencing the national legislation for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And it's, you know, with that spirit that kind of, I've been described as having an old soul and things of that sort, but I will tell you that that at a cool conference like South by Southwest EDU, it may sound a little old-fashioned to say, but I'll say it since you know a little bit more about my background. But I truly believe that public education is the cornerstone of the democracy that this country has been built on and that we continue to strive to keep today. And our democracy has always been rooted in these demographic changes, which actually, when done right, makes us stronger as a nation. So we've heard all the predictions about the wave, right? How changing demographics in our country are going to affect our future. But the face of education, I always believe public schools are just a little microcosm of what's happening across a state or in the country. But we know that it's already changed, and it will continue to change. And from a global perspective, we know that India has more honor students than the United States has students, right? China is going to soon become the #1 English-speaking country in the world. And last year, more Chinese students took AP classes and courses than American students. And when you look at Texas, our 2010 census numbers, you can see that this state is one of 3, along with Florida and California, where we're seeing a rapid growth in a population of children under the age of 5. And these 3 states alone make up more than half of the increase in children under the age of 5 in the entire United States. Now, the face of public education is changing, and it's changing in other ways. So, for example, since our inception, public education has been sort of a public monopoly, right? We had public schools that were kind of one size fits all. We never really changed the way we did our delivery models. We have oftentimes our zip codes and things of that sort drive who goes to which schools, and we kind of call it a day and we would all go home. Well, that has changed for us. The concept that we're the only choice for families doesn't exist anymore. Families have more choices than ever before, whether it's charter schools, online, home schools, private schools, and in some states we've even seen voucher systems. And Texas is one of those states that's constantly talking about that kind of design. And as these changes accelerate, public education in our institutions absolutely have to keep pace. And in Austin, part of our strategy, part of what we think about and look to is our own priorities that are largely driven by that changing face of public education so that we can serve today's learners. It starts with, in large part, what we did was a bit of a rethinking of how we approached all of our academic programming. We had a lot of comprehensive designed programs across the district, and we've started to break out more of what we're calling a portfolio of rich options so that we can show families that within our institution itself, if you believe and support this kind of design, that you too can have choices within AISD. So some examples, and I won't belabor these, but if you're interested, I highly encourage you to go to our website and check them out. We have the Ann Richards School for Young Women. It opened in 2007. We'll be graduating our first class of seniors this year, but it is a school that's completely designed for, it's an all-girls school, which will be quickly followed up with our board-approved a school for young men. And it will be part of our bond program, and we intend to launch that school in 14-15. We even went a step further. Those 2 schools are schools of what we call choice. So families can apply, you have criteria to get in, but we're even starting 2 single-sex designs in neighborhoods for middle schools so that you can have a single-sex girls and boys school in the same attendance area. We even have very strong vertical teams that are getting signature programming so that when you start programs in pre-K and kindergarten, if you stay in those neighborhoods, you can finish through 12th grade with an articulation and a bit of a concentration in an area that might be of interest to your child. So I know I have some principals here today, but I can tell you Highland Park Elementary School, Lamar Middle School, and McCallum High School are all part of a strong articulation that's about ensuring that we have a strong fine arts program in one of our vertical teams. We have a liberal arts academy and 2 magnet schools, feeder middle schools, Keeling and Fulmore, that feed up into LASA, the liberal arts academy, that's all about magnet schools and allowing parents to have some choice within the system. Graham Elementary School, however, is a completely different design, very focused on a neighborhood, but really looks at a results-driven culture that has a bit of a back-to-basics approach, which might not be the choice for everybody in this room, but it has been a little lighthouse of hope in some of our communities where there are high concentrations of children in poverty with high language learning needs. And then I saw my principal from Garza High School, which is another high school that is extremely different to the large comprehensive designs that most people recognize, where our students go to the school and have a lot of choice and selection for themselves in designing the programming they want and graduating early or later, depending on the pace that they set for themselves. And so this is just a tiny bit of the things that we're doing. Our board also has been trying to work in the space, which is a pretty uncomfortable space. We've been trying to create our own in-district charters to be part of our portfolio that allows for us to have more flexibility and autonomy within the schools that already exist within our system. And while, you know, in all these designs, whether it's single-sex education or giving students more flexibility in how they make choices for high school, like at Garza, or even in-district chartering, it is a space that sometimes makes people feel a little uncomfortable. We've had people express concerns that perhaps the district is, you know, breaking the law. I mean, I've heard a lot of arguments about single-sex education, or that the research isn't perfectly clear that this is a sure pathway to get success for student groups, or that, you know, we are somehow giving away something that should be ours. But we believe that these types of options are far more in alignment with the changing face of education and giving today's learners and families more choices for their future. Now, I also believe that in addition to our families, we're starting to see a changing face in education as it relates to how we're looking at our systems of people. Now, we are a business of people, right? We are big people serving little people so we can educate them and make them better big people than we ever were. So the concept of the changing face of a human capital strategy is also a core element for what we need to do to ensure we have the right people in front of our kids every single day. Emphasizing things like staff selection, leadership, and capacity building is absolutely critical and must be supported by systems that put the best tools in the hands of the people that work as closely as possible with children every day. So the people who lead our schools and teach our students are changing just like the students are. And we're even finding that we can no longer rely on that concept like our early teachers were, career educators or career teachers. In our district, we're finding that the era of the long-term single career teacher is quite frankly over. Our data in Texas actually mirrors the state's data about teachers and how they come to us. And if the commissioner didn't talk about that yesterday, I'll just tell you, what we're seeing is almost a 50-50 split for how teachers come through the pathway of being educated and end up in our classrooms, in our schools. In other words, half of them are coming through colleges and universities. The other half are coming through alternative certification programs. And the difference is depending on what your school is made up of and what the kids are like and what the needs are. Instead of thinking this group is better than that group, I encourage my principals to treat the teachers the way I treat them as principals when I think about hiring them for school placements in leadership roles. Find the best match of the teacher for the students you're trying to serve, and let all the other stuff go and just ensure that they have the tools they need to be great teachers. Now, part of what I want you to understand is when I came to Austin as a superintendent now a little over 3.5 years ago, it was, every community is different, and I wouldn't have these priorities that my board worked with us to set for our district. I wouldn't just take these and overlay them in some other community. What I know that I learned more because I was here in Austin than any other community that I've been in is that you can't really run the Austin Independent School District without getting a good sense of what Austin is as a city. And so now I'm going to play a little game with you later, but does anybody know what I mean when I say independent school district? Just kind of raise your hand. So you must be from Texas, right? So who's not from Texas? Can you raise your hand? Right, so every school is considered an ISD, an independent school district. And you heard me right when I said it, because right here in the great state of Texas, we are, Austin is sort of like the blue dot in a sea of political red. And we're known as the People's Republic of Austin. And so while our school districts are independent, I can tell you with certainty that we are also independent as a city as well. Austin, to me, kind of wants us to secede from Texas in the way that Texas wants us to secede from the Union. And one of the things about being among the Texas cities is that this fierce independent spirit that the state projects on a national level is really a lot of how the city projects its place in the world that has helped us earn a pretty incredible reputation. We are unique among Texas cities, and I'd even argue that we're unique among American cities. We're in our own special category with a global reputation, and people really think of Austin as a place of innovation and creativity. And I'm telling you all of this because I think as a school district, we are expected in Austin to do so much more, to do our part to keep that reputation incredibly strong. So if you're going back to your various states and your various cities, whether it's here in Texas or outside of Texas, I will tell you that that is something, a culture that I inherited that I think makes us a beautiful, special, special place. Austin is a forward-thinking city. It's been built on this creative class committed to the city's call to keep Austin weird. And in like these groundbreaking books and things that people refer to, I don't know if you've read the one by Richard Florida on the creative class, but the point is that Austin is identified as a handful of cities in the United States that really nurtures this creative class and therefore serves as a springboard for a future economic well-being for having been part of this city and we hope part of our school district. So Austin was declared the #1 best city to live in for this decade. And the Wall Street Journal took it a step further and helped us understand a little bit of what's underneath that. And they found that the average net growth among college students is going to be at the highest rate ever during this same time period right here in Austin. So you can see that while there's oil under the ground in the state of Texas, there's a lot of creative people that are equally as rich in their passion and their resources that will make Austin a great city like the state of Texas. So we're poised for this promising future. And to us, I think it all hinges on education. And today's learners are so dramatically different, even in Austin, just looking back 10 years ago. So we're a district of about 86,000 students. We have over 12,000 employees and about 126 schools. And within our student demographic breakdown, things have changed, and this is how it all shakes out. 3 in 5 students are Hispanic. That wasn't true just 10 years ago. 2 out of 3 are economically disadvantaged. 1 in 10 are special education, and 1 in 3 do not speak English as their first language. And one of our fastest growing populations is indeed English language learners. And we all know that there's a lot of research on language learners. And what I found when I came into Austin is that we needed to make a choice, right? We needed to really get prepared for the wave that everybody said was coming, but just for the record, like the tsunami was hitting, and it's just such a great place to live. You're in the sun, the weather's always good. I just don't think like everybody feels the pressure as much, but in the system, we were feeling that pressure. And so we know we have a resource that our kids bring to school every day. They have a culture from Central and South America. We have cultures from Vietnam, China, and other ethnicities and cultures that are all kind of coming into Austin. And we just weren't tapping into it, really valuing the child for what they brought to school every single day, and also allowing our English-speaking population to help support our language learners while they too could become biliterate, bicultural, and bilingual. So we changed. This was a pretty, I mean, and for the rest of the world, this probably might not sound too controversial, but in Texas, it was a pretty big deal. I made the recommendation, and thankfully my board was behind me, and the community over time kind of came along with us too. We needed to make the shift in our model and our approach to bilingual education. We went from a late exit transition model to dual language, a dual language model, one-way and two-way immersion, which we're beginning in our early grade levels, but we believe over time, as research has shown in other districts, will simply transform the district. And to give you a sense of what that has looked like, we started off with 10 pilot schools, and today, and that was just in 2009, the fall of 2009, and today we now have 54 one-way dual language elementaries, 12 two-way dual language elementaries that concentrate in Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese, and Chinese. And we hope to bring more online over the future and take it up into the secondary level. But it's these kinds of choices and decisions that we make that can fundamentally change a child's life. And for some families, we know that the public education system in Austin may be the first real connection they've ever had in a U.S. education system. So we do a lot around multicultural outreach and parent support specialists, and we put a lot of money and resources. We have a lot of good partners that help capitalize on these dollars, but we're looking for ways to really engage our families. And like I said before, we do outreach, again, that kind of falls in that category of the portfolio of rich options, changing the model. We're going to people where we hear that they are. So for example, we launched Educa Austin, which is an educational Spanish radio program led by our Public Relations and Multicultural Outreach Office. We also do a program called Maestro en Casa, which teaches English to parents to help families support their child's educational experiences. And we want to continue to do these kinds of things to ensure that our families have these sorts of opportunities. Now, I have to say, if I didn't forewarn you before, that I am a middle school teacher. It's kind of why I found the whole Bill Gates thing absolutely hilarious, giggled for hours, but I'm not sure everybody else thought it was that funny. But I wanted to just tell you that I was also the former superintendent in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we're here for professional development, but the creator of Peanuts, Charles Schulz, lived in St. Paul, and we used to always say when we would do PE, try not to have a good time. This is supposed to be educational. So I will invite you to join me, and I need to kind of get a sense of this so that I can decide which direction I'm going to go in my speech. So I'm going to give you a statement, and if it's true, I need you to stand up and say, "That's me." So put your papers on the side. We've got plenty of space and chairs. Nothing like a superintendent to bring out, all the cool people in South by Southwest EDU. And then put your, get your hands ready, so you can stand up. And I'm going to make a statement, and I'm going to give you the statement so you can think about it, and then I'm going to give it to you again so you can stand up. So here's the practice statement. I'm sitting in the Austin Convention Center for South by Southwest EDU. If that statement is true for you, you would then stand up and say, "That's me," okay? All right, hint, you should all stand when I make this. Wait, not yet, wait. When I say the statement, this is a hint. I'm trying to warm you up. I am sitting in the Austin Convention Center for South by Southwest EDU. Great, okay. Now here's okay, you can sit down. I'm gonna give you another sentence. Okay, I am a teacher, principal, someone who is an educator, okay? I am an educator. Okay, that's about half the room, okay. I'm from Texas. Okay. I was born in a country other than the United States. Okay, all right. Public education isn't really my bag, but I needed a place to blog. No? Okay, good, great, great. I speak more than one language. Okay, so I speak more than 3 languages. Okay. And I attended a 2- or 4-year college or university. Wow, we got some mega brains in here. See? Just like Austin said, it attracts people. And so the great news about the people who just stood up on the college piece, the New York Times reports that now you qualify for a job as a receptionist or a secretary. Just last week, they actually reported that even entry-level jobs require a college education. And this is what I want to talk to you a little bit about as we think about today's learners. It is essential that we work with our students as early as possible in the concept of a college-ready culture in our public education districts, right? I mean, even though I know people make choices on the back end after they graduate, they're all grown, they know what they want to do, that's fine. But what I want to say is, for us in Austin, the focus on a college-ready culture is really, really important. And just so you know, we are making progress in AISD. Our graduation rates now top 80%. And I was really proud in our last round of data for English language learners. In 1 year, it increased a whopping 4 percentage points, and we also did it again for children who live in poverty, another 4 percentage points. So I mention that just to say that it is going to be more important than ever that our students pursue some form of higher education after they leave us. And we are trying to do our part in AISD. In 2011, our post-secondary enrollment rate increased by 6 percentage points to 68% in just 1 year. The push on this, without having read the article from the New York Times, is that in Texas, as our leadership for the state, and certainly our new commissioner, but even the commissioner before him, talked about how all the wave that's coming in this changing face of education really needs to have the skills, those, I told you, those career skills to ensure that they can be successful, and knowing that the entry-level jobs now are going to require college, some kind of degree, is going to be more important than ever. And I may surprise you when I say this, but I will tell you, at least under this administration, with this superintendent's educational philosophy about how things are to work, I believe that the college-going culture starts in pre-K, okay? Pre-K, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, but early childhood education. So in Texas, if you didn't read about this, I just want you to know that the bottom fell out in funding for in our last legislative session. The state cut upwards of $5 billion out of public ed. And we were left kind of holding the bags in districts, doing layoffs and all kinds of other horrible things that really, for the first time since the World Wars, kind of set Texas back in a long-standing history and practice of always investing more in public education. But our district made a really tough decision. When the state cut all their grants to fund full-day pre-K, we took on that cost of the state share. We kept our piece, and then we invested even more. And we let go of other things to ensure that we kept our early childhood programs. And I say that because there's nothing better to help support a college-going culture than ensuring that the achievement gap never starts in the first place. And you can do that by investing in early childhood education. And remember I told you I was a superintendent in St. Paul? So back in those days, I got to spend a lot of time with a super cool economist named Art Rolnick from the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis. And he was just like a business guy, a money guy, a numbers guy. But the business community charged him to go and find out what was if they could invest in anything, whether it was the legislature or the business community, what got the best rate of return for the dollars invested in public education. And his research shows that he estimated that a public investment in providing quality early care for at-risk children can yield a real internal rate of return of 12 to 16%. And I can't think, I don't know what your investment portfolio looks like. I can't think of anything that I have that's turning any kind of return like that these days. But that was part of what his work, and I think our work, has to be about. Ensuring that when we have the opportunity to make choices, and even though you might have to let go of something else, that when it all shakes down and those budget cuts really shook us down to the core, that you pick those things that will get you the kind of results you need as early as possible to ensure that students get off on the right foot from the very beginning. And we do a lot of other things too. We mix it up. We've got some shovel-ready programs that the Obama administration loves to fund, like AVID and things of that sort that help students get access to more rigorous courses in middle school and high school. And then we also did some other creative partnerships. I don't think these principals are here, but at LBJ High School and Reagan High School, we have Early College High School and Early College Start, where we teamed up with Educate Texas and our community college to ensure that when students walk across the stage in May and June, they can hold both a high school diploma and an associate's degree in the other hand for as a 12th grader going, leaving our system. So we are really trying to work it at both bookends, get again, with dual language immersion and early childhood education on one end, and really investing in those things while we have students who are with us in real time that won't get the benefit of those things necessarily, but they can get the supports to ensure that those graduation rates continue to increase. And then I'll put another piece on the table as it relates to a college-going culture and things that are important. Now, I saw that many of us, half of us, are from Texas. I am not born and raised in Texas. I told you, I'm from Alabama, and we have our own things around, I think, an antiquated notion about what's happening to Black and brown children being over-identified into programs like special education and disciplinary programs. But Texas, I'm going to tell you, it takes it to a whole new level. Like, it's part of statute, right? We have to create places to put kids. And then our district took it to another level. Like, although we had to create these disciplinary education alternative programs and for kids that, yes, were being very naughty and shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and they absolutely were doing some unsafe things that we do not want happening in schools and in classrooms, putting at risk our students and teachers. But we had kind of done it in a broad brush, where we even took discretionary removals and we're placing our students in that program. And we even made it an elementary version to boot. So we had elementary all the way up to secondary, and we were allowing our discretionary removals. Kids who might have a potty mouth, a little smarty pants attitude, and they would be treated just like students who were security risks in schools. And we were pulling them out, attendance in this area, whether it's not going to class because you're skipping school, or not going to class because of the choices we made as adults, ended up, right, putting us in a place that doesn't take the brilliant people of this innovative South by Southwest EDU to find out. If they're not in class with the best teachers, when we can have them in class, they don't learn as much. And if they don't learn all that they need to learn, then they don't graduate on time. So we were seeing a pattern of a gross overplacement and discretionary removals into this baby prison pipeline thing that is a long-standing practice of the state of Texas, but it also become part of our culture in our district. Took 3 years and a lot of sweat equity from our principals who were trying to really fix this thing that had gotten out of control over the last decades. And to make a long story short, we have really changed that design. And where it is discretionary and the adults can make a better choice, we are choosing to keep them in school, to help work with them on their other issues, whatever that might be, and to keep them in class so that they get the education they deserve and that we know how to deliver. So at the end of the day, I want you to know, comparing just this past fall to this fall, we have 350 less students in that DAEP alternative learning thing. And given what I've seen happens to students after they have a lifetime in that design, which often led to, you know, our judicial system and prison, that we've been able to redirect a third of our students back to where we want them to be. And I know that while I know I was having a lot of heartburn about it, and so were other principals, it really took the entire school system, even action by my school board, to make that happen. So, you know, today's learner, this changing face with more black and brown and poor kids coming into our public school systems, when we already had a longstanding practice of over-identification, you've got to break those things apart to ensure that we remove those barriers forever from systems like ours. And you know, this is the state where George Bush, who became our president, launched the concept of accountability under No Child Left Behind. And in the state of Texas, that is alive and well. And that kind of accountability system has had its double-edged sword, right? It brought to light, it spotlighted all the challenges for underserved, disenfranchised groups of students and families. And on the other hand, I don't know, I mean, I've worked in other states, but I have to tell you, Texas is pretty high on testing. I mean, it is like part of what we love to do. And if you're not a child in AISD or in an ISD in Texas, unless you know how to fill out a bubble sheet. And if you don't know how, we're going to bubble you to death. We're trying to change that. Our initiative around Whole Child, Every Child, really expanding the investments in kids that invests in them, not just because they can pass a state accountability test, but because they deserve a better quality education and that they can get more out of the system and will be able to check that test or any test off their list of things to do without breaking a sweat when we use our time the way our people know how to do it. We want teachers teaching. We want principals in classrooms working with those teachers. And we want kids not filling out practice bubble sheets, but to really learn their content. And in that, we have two big concepts going on. We have a concept around social and emotional learning, which is a huge partnership with a national institute called CASEL and a lot of local funders who are supporting us educating through the heart, meaning that it's as important as the brain, where our kids set goals, they overcome obstacles on their own, they learn those skills to develop healthy relationships. And at the same time, on the other hand, we are doing other things like Any Given Child, which is something that we're particularly proud of and in alignment with our city's goals, where we partner with the Kennedy Center out of Washington, D.C., and our arts community leaders, where we are working to ensure that every child, any given child in our district, can have a multi-year arts-rich experience. Now, all this may sound like too touchy-feely for some people, especially in Texas, where we're pretty hardcore about that testing stuff. But the data shows, we're looking at our own data in AISD, when we ensure that our students have 3 years of fine arts, arts-rich experiences, there is a 20 percentage point difference in graduation rates. 78% versus 98%. That is a showstopper for us. And our board, in its recent action, and I'm talking like within the last couple of months, so much so that we've embedded it into our bond programming, where we're going to the polls in May, but we are investing fully in a district-wide effort to ensure that any given child has an arts-rich experience. And remember, I told you about Highland Park and Lamar and McCallum schools that are part of a strong vertical team. We're trying to take that kind of model and ensure that no matter where you live and what your zip code says about where you attend school or what choice you make, that kind of rich experience is available to your child. We also are doing, like I said, some shovel-ready work that's well-known and well-respected across the country. We're teaming up with the Anti-Defamation League to be a no place for hate district. Knowing that our diversity is changing this fast, both staff and students, we want to ensure that everyone is doing their part to promote and support the individual differences among us as people, and challenging everything that we see. I'm from the South, and if you're from the South, you know what I mean. These concepts around bigotry and prejudice that tend to surface their ugly heads in our public schools every day. And you know, and it's a, you know, and it's a great match. Remember I told you about Austin and what a cool city it is? Our city leaders have dubbed Austin the live music capital of the world. And Austin continues to kind of grow in other areas of the arts like digital media and gaming. And we're just becoming a world-class arts city across all types of disciplines. And in their recent data, they've shown that this kind of creative sector actually generates upwards of $4.35 billion in economic activity for Austin and about 50,000 jobs. So when I, again, think about the changing face, today's learners for tomorrow's leaders, if you want to stay in Austin and be a leader and have these kinds of career and life opportunities, being in that creative space and the school system supporting you early on so you can be successful in that creative space is really essential, for our work. And I'll just close out here just so that we have some time to answer questions. But a couple of years ago, when there's this really cool lady who does a lot of this demographic work, and she told me that she had gone off to Barcelona, Spain for something and heard about a Picasso exhibit, and that she thought I would really enjoy it. She knew that when I was in college, I did a junior year abroad. I studied in Seville, Spain for a year, and I had not been back to Spain since I left. I mean, I never had an opportunity to go back. Life happens, blah, blah, blah. I never went back to Spain. And she said, you know, you should go. This exhibit's so incredible. I don't have a lot to tell you about it, but you got to see it. They did this whole collection on Picasso, and it includes his early years. I said, okay. So, you know, it was over winter break, and I convinced my husband to, you know, go for us to go to Spain and go to Barcelona and see this exhibit and let me have a 20-year anniversary back in a country that I fell in love with so long ago. And so we went, and I did go to the Picasso exhibit. And does anyone know what they mean when they say the early years? Like what age group we're talking about here for Picasso? Give me a guess. What do you think? How old was he? Somebody says 40, someone says 8, okay, you're right, 8 years old. The early years were 8 years old. I mean, call me crazy, I only remember the blue stuff, right? So I was like, God, I studied in Spain. I mean, I called myself educated. I had no idea there was like the Picasso, elementary Picasso. And he really did. I mean, they had works of art. I'm talking like master classical painting that made you weep when you looked at it and you really put in perspective what this child could do. And his dad actually took it to heart more than I did. I mean, I was just kind of crying. When Picasso was 13 years old, his father, who was also a painter, came home, and Picasso had finished a still life painting, gave up painting for the rest of his life after seeing his son's work, knowing he could never be that good again, or at least Now, I've heard that there's some paintings that they did find, but he must have done them when Picasso wasn't looking. But what struck me about this whole experience was, wasn't the art, although I'm going to tell you, the mom on the back of the bread pan thing, whatever that thing was, his painting of his mother, I mean, there was a lot of love there. You could see it in this art. But what I couldn't help but think about was, what would happen if Picasso was attending our public schools, right? I mean, what would happen in the choices we would make? And by the way, as you go through the exhibit, you see how young Picasso, as a teenager, enjoyed Japanese eroticism too. And so that at 13, 15 years old probably would have gotten him thrown out of our middle schools and put in that DAP program I was telling you about. But the point is, you know, when our choices, to me, either unleash the next great geek like Bill Gates or nurture a future artistic legend like Picasso. And no matter what we might think we know about kids, we really don't know them. And we don't know all about their potential and how the slightest thing we do may or may not change their future. So when I got back home, and I'm going to tell you, as a superintendent, like when I ended my job in St. Paul, they gave me the flight for transition time. When I landed, I was the superintendent in Austin. I haven't unpacked for 3.5 years. I've got boxes and I can't find my dishes, but I went in that room of boxes and found my old poster of Picasso from an exhibit that I went to see in like New York around the same time period when I was in school, like 92, 94. The Metropolitan Museum was doing an exhibit. And I had one of those posters and I put it up in my college dorm room. And I can tell you I'm too old to put posters on the wall anymore. But what I did with that poster, I stuck it straight in front of my treadmill. And while, yes, it's true, I clearly don't get on the treadmill every day, but I get on there every other day. And I look at that poster now every single day, because in my mind, it reminds me of the choices I make and all those little Picassos and Bill Gates and the kids that were being over-identified in the DAEP and the students who are the emerging English language learners groups. But I'm reminded that if in only some distant way I make choices that becomes the hinge of the destiny of just one child who's gonna be a future leader, I need to do it well every single day. I want to thank you for your time, and I welcome your questions. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm David Spencer. I serve on a local school board in Comal ISD, which is, by the way, a very red county, just south of here. And you're such a great communicator, thank you, and I'm so appreciative of your comments. You touched around this, and I'm very curious, especially here in Austin, about how you guys are implementing college-ready culture, and in particular, our rabid emphasis on STEM. By the way, I am an electrical engineer. I got my degree from UT Austin, and so I feel like I can say this. I'm going to dare to say this. You mentioned Richard Florida. Daniel Pink is another favorite.
I had to cut him out. I ran out of time. Yeah.
So the whole idea behind skills for where we're headed, not skills for where we've been, and in particular communication, which we see with you, for me as an employer, group problem solving, and then the whole emphasis around design. So here in the center of the creative world, the blue dot in the middle of the Red Sea, how are you guys implementing college-ready culture, our 4x4 insistence on math and engineering, when in fact perhaps the skill set we should be teaching and the college-ready culture is not what we're emphasizing in STEM and 4x4. How are you guys handling that in AISD, and do you agree with that premise, and if so, what are you doing about it?
That is an incredibly interesting premise, and I'm going to say where we, sure. I think it's going to be split. It's going to be split because we work with people that the adults we have to bring along with us. So there's a lot that we're doing around STEM and 4x4 that that I would say, and I'm going to get far ahead of myself, and I know this is being taped, so I hope I don't let their cat out of the bag. Everybody tells me like I don't have a filter on those things. So there is a group that's a big research group in the country. We hope to be the first district that takes their decades and decades long data about how we're preparing kids, and whether or not this approach that you described that we've been doing, that's kind of preparing kids for today, not really the future, is the best approach, and how do we change it? And I'm talking in, I'm trying to cloak my language, but here's the short version. Their data shows that our focus should be on those things that motivate children to learn, to want to explore, to want to be creative, and the content is just is important for them to learn, but they find the love for that, how to break it down, how to actually be better team players and be motivated to do this work by nailing the concept of motivation. And while that is a very soft skill, Daniel Pink talks about, the right and left brain and all those sorts of things, but at the end of the day, they believe that they have found the hard evidence that can almost be distilled in they're like, you can almost ask it if you want to be as basic as this in 9 questions and understand what motivates that child so much so that if you hate math, if you hate science, it breaks the content piece or makes the content piece secondary to what motivates you to be a learner, and to show teachers how to unpack that in the students. And so, we can spend, I think everybody has heard, there's tons of people who can talk to you about STEM here, and we do it, in about the same way that everybody else does, and we have some special things about AISD, but I think that this shift is going to be, especially in Texas, the way we behave around testing is going to be a game changer if we can get people to consider it in a different way. And we're going to, one of our local companies, GSDM, they're helping this other organization nationally try to pull this together, but they've asked AISD to be part of that conversation, so that students can learn the content, teachers can teach the content, but it's going to need to be through this change in the way that we approach kids about what motivates them to learn and getting to that child by child. Is there another question? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, just so other people can hear you.
Hi, my name's Haiti Fuselier. I'm really excited about the 2013 bond package, in particular the technology aspect. And I was wondering, you were talking about these innovative programs that were, for example, in Richard School that are built to kind of attract students. And I was wondering if there were any plans to kind of motivate the digital learners or the digital natives in the district in kind of developing CATE or developing the technology programs in AISD to, ready students for the Austin culture and also the very technology-saturated economy that desperately seeks talent with technology skills.
Yeah, and that saturation is, so we have two things happening in our bond, but that saturation for us is like a tsunami on one side and a desert on the other. And do you live in Austin? I mean, how long have you been here? How long have you been here? Okay, so you've been here several years. So you've heard about East and West and what's happening on either side of I-35, which is rapidly becoming on either side of MOPAC, because of the socioeconomic gaps. So part of our bond is about addressing the digital divide for all those families and children in East Austin that literally have no access to technology whatsoever if it weren't for schools. So much so that we're going to have to become our school buildings and buses, we're even going to try to do it on buses, are going to be how we kind of cast the wireless net, if you will, over East Austin. We're going to have to utilize our schools to make that possible for kids and families as they leave the schools buildings and go home and try to be part of all this. We are, on the other side, we know that we want to be in this space that is also very exciting, that we want to bring to kids and families that have the means as well as those who don't. And in that space, we did not move toward the concept of, a one-to-one device. We wanted to mix it up some on like the BYOD and think more, bring your own device, and think more about how we would try to reach the learner where they are and change our ways of thinking about policy and practice to ensure that we're leveraging what kids bring to school and tie in this way. But the big piece that I think is most exciting about what we're trying to do, and I do think the equity piece is important, and I think meeting kids where they are is important too, is that we have a huge investment in those kinds of technology and outreach that for us will change the way we do education, taking time out of those things that are I would say slowing down our educators and our teachers so that they have the tools in front of them to leverage our kids in real time. Public education by and large is pretty antiquated in this space. A lot of our bond stuff has to go into the infrastructure and some of the basic pieces to keep everything moving. But there's like one tiny bucket that our business community is working with us on where we've committed to trying to be in the new space for what that all means. I can honestly say that I think this is one of the toughest areas for public education to be in. The focus is often about inequities, but we do have some money in the bond to do that work. And it's going to be, I would say, of the $85 million that are in it, it'll probably be about a fourth of those resources dedicated to like the future thinking of how this could shape up. But everything else is really trying to bring everybody online and dealing with our equity issues for the digital divide. And so it's not as sexy, but it's solid and some sexy. Yes, sir.
I have two kids who go to a great elementary school here in Austin, Metz Elementary, just north of the river and just east of I-35. And it's overwhelmingly Hispanic, overwhelmingly English language learners, I think overwhelmingly free and reduced lunch, but it is just such a wonderful, extraordinary school. Both of our girls, are learning Spanish, but it really, you mentioned biculturalism, and that's really kind of what's happening. That area is gentrifying very quickly, but those families aren't going to school there. And I know it's a very specific question, but I hope it's relevant to a lot of the people in the room. Any thoughts on, is there an opportunity there, especially with elementary, enrollment kind of flatlining? Is there an opportunity there to kind of market that opportunity or get people to consider sending their kids to their neighborhood public school, even though their kids might be the minority?
Yeah, it's, you know, Austin's incredibly unique. Now, we have, I mean, any business would be thrilled about our market share, right? We're at about a 94, I think we're at 96, and now we're more like at a 94% market share for all school-age kids in the Austin area. So they come to our ISD. And then we have a growing population that is exercising choice outside of the district. But Austin's, part of what makes us special is that we do have a strong, or we try to promote, strong neighborhood schools, and that is mostly in the elementary level. But what we have seen, especially in gentrified areas, that even when it's an exemplary elementary school in that area, families will still exercise choice, especially if you have the means to exercise choice. And so, and so I think this is a little bit of a community belief system that has to be supported by your biggest ambassadors. So I'll lay it out there. Nothing will kill and hurt a school more than staff or parents that don't go out and market their own school. And I hear this all the time. I will hear it from middle school families that will tell me what an elementary school teacher will say, or a principal or another parent. I'm glad we went to school together, but don't send your kid to this school, which is where you're supposed to go, right? Because, you know, of whatever reason they decide, whether it's true or not. But that piece about, and this is we just did a little work session with GSDM a week or so ago, and that was part of what they were telling us. Like this, you have like ambassadors and supporters that should be out there really advocating for their neighborhood school, and their impact oftentimes is more negative than supportive. So we know that there are teachers and parents and principals that can deliver in high poverty, high need areas that are being gentrified, that are exemplary sites, hands down. And yet, we sometimes can be our worst enemies in this space. And so I think, you know, and I don't know if like that's not certainly all of it, but I think, I mean, I look at families, I look at little Blackshear Elementary School in a really gentrified area. It's almost empty. It's almost empty. It's a successful school. We put great principals there. You got a great one there right now. It has a lot to do with how we have, how the adult stuff plays out in public schools. But Austin doesn't have a single academically unacceptable elementary school in the system. But there are areas where we struggle a lot to keep our enrollment and to keep families there. I'll end there. Thank you so much. It was great to see everybody.